After a remarkable NFL season, we have a ton to discuss in regards to what the future of the NFL may look like. Last year was the very first time we saw a tremendous amount of movement in terms of the quarterback position. We saw Phillip Rivers go to the Indianapolis Colts for a season. We saw Tom Brady leave the New England Patriots to form a super team in Tampa Bay. And we even saw a redemption story in the form of Cam Newton trying to unite with Bill Belichick in order to get some sort of revenge tour where Bill Belichick got revenge on Tom Brady and Cam Newton got revenge on the Carolina Panthers for releasing him prematurely. Now, of course, before we get to the content, I just want to let you guys know I have 3 PlayStation 5 digital editions that I'm giving away to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. Whether you're an old sub or a new sub, if you subscribe and hit that notification bell, then you have entered for a chance to win a PS5. If you want additional entries, then make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram, because that's also a pretty nice way to get your takes featured in the content. Also, a huge shout out to our latest Mike Mafia members: Driven to Success, Kush FN, Arthur Jordan, Victor Rivas, Chad Torres, Alan Cardwell, Mr. Wolf, Forest Monster, and Ahu the Fox. Thank you guys so much for supporting me by becoming Mike Mafia members. People like you allow me to do what I do for a living full time. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The first player on this list that is probably going to get traded in the offseason is Gardner Minshew. Now, last year at this time, Gardner Minshew was viewed as the charismatic future of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars literally traded for Nick Foles and then extended his contract before he sustained a freak injury in the first week of the NFL season. And when Nick Foles was ready to come back, the Jacksonville Jaguars elected to bench him in favor of Gardner Minshew, with good reason. Minshew wasn't the most accurate quarterback, but he threw for 21 touchdowns and had only 6 interceptions while completing 61% of his passes. This past year, he was pretty decent as well. He didn't get to play in as many games because he dealt with injuries, but he was able to complete 66% of his completions, throw for 16 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So overall, throughout his career, he has 37 touchdowns and 11 interceptions for a completion percentage of 63%. The problem is the Jacksonville Jaguars also are in a position to draft the most transcendent quarterback talent we have ever seen since the days of Andrew Luck, which means that Gardner Minshew could potentially be starting at quarterback elsewhere. Now, whether he gets traded this offseason or when he gets traded in the middle of the season, I have no idea. All I know is there's no way the Jacksonville Jaguars hold on to an asset like Gardner Minshew, who is going to cost them next to nothing to trade, when they could get a pretty decent return for him. I'm estimating either a 2nd or 3rd round pick, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but either way, there's no reason why the Jacksonville Jaguars should hold on to this 3rd-year player. Up next, we have Sam Darnold. Now, the probability Sam Darnold gets traded, in my opinion, is a little bit less than some of these other players, and that's mainly because Sam Darnold wouldn't get traded unless if a blockbuster is available to the New York Jets, where they could go after either a player of the caliber of Deshaun Watson or maybe even Aaron Rodgers. And I don't see the New York Jets being willing to part with Sam Darnold and multiple 1st-round picks and maybe even a 2nd-round pick to get either of those players, especially when you have Sam Darnold on a good contract this year with the amazing coaching staff that Robert Saleh is putting together. The only way I see Sam Darnold getting traded is if somehow they're able to swing a home run trade, which I personally think would be poor asset management, but hey, this is a list of players that could be traded in the offseason. You guys already know how I feel about Sam Darnold. I made many videos on him. I felt like he was doomed from the start because he never really had a good amount of weapons around him during his first couple of years. The best player he had on his team was a past his prime Le'Veon Bell, and the Jets recently were able to get him some good blindside help in the form of Mekhi Becton, and if they hold on to their draft pick this year, they could potentially get themselves another wide receiver for Sam Darnold moving forward, or even more offensive line help in the form of Penei Sewell. Bear in mind, they have 2 first-round picks this year, so the possibilities are endless. Up next, we have Carson Wentz, and the Carson Wentz situation is fairly interesting because on one hand, we felt like the reason why Carson Wentz would get traded or demand a trade was because Doug Peterson elected to bench Carson Wentz, and the Eagles essentially picked Carson Wentz over Doug Peterson when they fired Doug Peterson. Nevertheless, you have to bear in mind that it wasn't Doug Peterson's decision to draft Jalen Hurts. It was the general manager that is still in Philadelphia, Howie Roseman, and he drafted Jalen Hurts for a reason over there. Now, the Eagles recently paid Carson Wentz a tremendous sum of money to be their starting quarterback of the future. Nevertheless, if you really have faith in someone, you don't bench him halfway through the season in the midst of a down year, when, in my opinion, clearly the problem was the fact that Carson Wentz had no offensive line and his best wide receiver was Travis freaking Fulgham. The Eagles have also been missing on their wide receiver picks. They drafted Jalen Reagor and JJ Arcega-Whiteside when DK Metcalf and Justin Jefferson were available. That's just bad luck, honestly. But all season long, you're going to see a ton of rumors that is going to link Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts because his old offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, is there, who appeared to be the real reason why the Philadelphia Eagles were so successful in their Super Bowl run. Speaking of former Philadelphia Eagles that succeeded under Frank Reich, let's talk about Nick Foles for a second, because I highly doubt he's going to make it onto the Chicago Bears roster next year. Now granted, Nick Foles has started a combined 11 games since leaving Philadelphia, and those 11 games were split between 2 different teams, but it seems like when this man isn't wearing a Philadelphia Eagles jersey, he's just hit with either bad luck or subpar play. So don't be surprised if the Chicago Bears elect to trade Nick Foles this offseason and go in a different direction in the form of their backup quarterback, because they are expected to retain Mitchell Trubisky for 1 more year. There are 2 teams that come into mind in terms of who is the most likely to bring Nick Foles onto the roster. The first being the Indianapolis Colts. There's clearly a tie over there. If they miss out on Matthew Stafford, or if they miss out on Carson Wentz, or any of their ideal quarterback prospects, which I doubt they will, then I see Nick Foles to be their backup plan, because he has a relationship with Frank Reich that's worked out in the past. But if that doesn't work out, then I could see him going back to Philadelphia to play mentor to Carson Wentz. That did wonders for Carson Wentz's development. Nick Foles really thrived in that situation when he was the backup to Carson Wentz. But for all you know, the Chicago Bears could elect to keep Nick Foles. Now up next, we have Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a player that is fairly remarkable when he's on the field. And that's where the problem lies. Jimmy G has had a lot of trouble with injuries this past year, and on top of that, Kyle Shanahan has expressed multiple times that if there is an opportunity to upgrade at the quarterback position, then he is going to go after it, whether that's in the form of Deshaun Watson or possibly spending a first-round pick on either Justin Fields or Trey Lance, who are more mobile quarterbacks. Now, I predicted that the San Francisco 49ers do end up selecting a player like Trey Lance, make him sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo for a year while he learns the complex Kyle Shanahan offense. But nevertheless, if the New England Patriots come calling and say, hey, we would like to have Jimmy Garoppolo back in Foxborough, then expect Kyle Shanahan to do a kindness to Bill Belichick, because Bill Belichick did a kindness to Kyle Shanahan when he traded Jimmy Garoppolo over to them for pennies on the dollar. Once again, the more likely scenario, I believe, is the 49ers draft a project QB and then decide to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo maybe next year, very similarly to what the Kansas City Chiefs did with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. Now, of course, this list wouldn't be complete without the most recent player to demand a trade, and that's Matthew Stafford. As a matter of fact, out of anyone on this list, I think the most likely target to get traded is Matthew Stafford. Both the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford agree that it's time to move on. The Detroit Lions clearly are headed towards a rebuild. Matthew Stafford is 32 years old, which in terms of football quarterback life expectancy, he is just beginning to enter his prime. This is a man that could give you a solid 7 to 8 years of football if you protect him properly. A lot of people would like to see him go to the San Francisco 49ers, but I don't see him as a fit in the San Francisco 49ers scheme at all, because Kyle Shanahan likes to run a lot of zone read offenses, and then he likes to run a lot of play action. I don't see Stafford as that type of player. I see him more as a player that would like to throw deep balls, and I'm pegging him as the Indianapolis Colts' top option. Now, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Matthew Stafford this offseason, because not only is he a remarkable talent that, in my opinion, is extremely underrated. As a matter of fact, I think he's like the second best quarterback on this entire list in terms of what he's done in the NFL, but unfortunately, his team was just never that good. I think if he's placed in the right situation with a good team built around him, then that team could potentially contend for Super Bowls. Now, moving on to our final two players on this list. The first one's more of an honorable mention, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers said that his future in Green Bay is uncertain. Now, don't get that twisted. That's not saying that he's demanding a trade, but since this video is players that could be traded in the offseason, I have to include him in this list. Now, when I'm reading articles, most articles say that Jordan Love is not ready to take the reins from Rodgers at all. He's more of a developmental project. I feel like the Green Bay Packers will bring back Aaron Rodgers for at least one more year, because who moves on from the NFL MVP after he made it to his second consecutive NFC championship? Clearly, the problem isn't at quarterback, and it would just look really silly if the Green Bay Packers did that. But at the same time, you have an opportunity to sell extremely high on a 37-year-old quarterback that just won MVP. You'll get some team to potentially offer you multiple first-round picks, and that type of offer could set you up for the future, but at the same time, Jordan Love isn't ready. So it's a difficult decision that the Green Bay Packers must make, but when all is said and done, I don't see any team being willing to give up multiple first-round picks to bring along Aaron Rodgers, especially because you never know what his future holds. It's no guarantee that he's going to try to play for another 8 years like Tom Brady's doing. And with that, we get to the final individual on our list, Deshaun Watson. Now, for all you know, this video could age poorly. Deshaun Watson could get along with Jack Easterby and Cal McNair, and they could all be happily ever after. But alas, I don't think that's what's going to happen. Deshaun Watson has been very disgruntled with the way the Houston Texans organization has been run. He's been very upset about the fact that the owner of the Houston Texans is leaving him out of crucial decisions as well. And now it appears as though the Houston Texans are still doing whatever the hell they want without consulting Deshaun Watson. After trading DeAndre Hopkins earlier, giving up multiple first-round picks, doing poor asset management, the Houston Texans went from a team that was contending to a team that might not contend for another 5 to 10 years. Deshaun Watson could pretty much become the next coming of Matthew Stafford, where he's going to waste his career away on a team that just simply doesn't know what they're doing. No offense, Detroit fans, but come on, let's be honest. The past decade wasn't really good on you guys. The issue is, Deshaun Watson doesn't necessarily have a lot of leverage in this scenario. For all you know, the Houston Texans could say, no matter what, we are not trading you, you're stuck here, and if you want, you could retire. Very similarly with what happened towards the beginning of Carson Palmer's holdout with the Cincinnati Bengals. It could be very ugly, but I do think Deshaun Watson will eventually get traded. Once a player gets alienated from a franchise, they're not going to put their body on the line for that franchise, and the Texans really did Deshaun Watson dirty, which is a shame because it's super hard to find your franchise QB, and here the Texans are finding their franchise QB, and now they alienated him. So let me know in the comment section down below if there's anyone I missed out on. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.